Everybody. Hey, blue collar millionaires. I got Wesley Leblanc here today. I met Wesley in Vegas, I believe, and he has bought a
Yep.
business that's netting over $1 million. Everybody asks Chris and I about buying businesses. Today, you're going to hear from Wesley from how he found it, how he bought it, and he's operating it now. Wesley, thanks for coming on a Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. No, appreciate it. Yeah, it's come a long way since Vegas, that's for sure.
Definitely. Tell us what type of business you got, and then we'll talk about how you found it and all the due diligence, because you put a lot of work in to get it. Maybe that's the best deal of all Kyle students.
I agree.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So what it is it's a used semi truck dealership. Been around for about 20 years. We're in Central Florida, South Central Florida, right outside of between Orlando and Tampa, and very typical dealership, I'd say. But in the semi truck world, things are just a little bit different. Obviously, less volume, and then a little more contact with the customers, a little bit longer process. That's what we really had to understand and unpack since we've been here. But yeah, high level view, sell used semis and get people on the road. A lot of it's owner operator, small fleets, because that's the guys that buy the used trucks. And then we buy a lot of our trucks that we're selling from larger fleets, auctions, and the always fun off the street. So guy rolls up with a truck and says, "Hey, I need to sell this thing," and we get to kind of do the on the spot review and see if it's worth our time. So it's been interesting. That's it in a nutshell, though.
How large is your what is the scale of your company look like staff wise? Like when you think of traditional dealership, you got your finance guy, you've got your salespeople, you got your sales manager, you got your back office folks doing all of the titling and whatnot. Is it pretty much the same setup at your place?
Yeah, it is. So the genuine opportunity in this, and the reason why I like it, and the reason why we really pushed on it, you have all those attributes of a typical franchise dealership, but on a very small, almost like a mom and pop feel scale. So the owners that we bought it from, they were owner operating it. The husband was kind of like the sales manager and did a lot of the front end of the house. The wife was kind of like the back end, office manager, title clerk, did all the back end work. So we've got a business that is scalable and has a large revenue base with a small footprint of people. We currently have 9 employees total, and that kind of covers a little bit of everything. We don't do any service outside of just the trucks we sell. So our as far as our mechanic side and stuff like that, service center is not fully built out to do outside work. So that keeps us a little streamlined there. But we kind of incorporate all the elements of a big dealership into kind of a small package, and just the bigger ticket and the ability to sell trucks all the time. It's a need. It's not a want. They got to get on the road and they got to go to work. It's almost less selling, more order taking and problem solving. So that fits me too, because I'm not a big sales guy. My cousin Ricky and my partner, he comes from the franchise dealership world, so he's way more skilled in traditional sales than I am when it comes to that. But it's a very unique situation. It's kind of cool because like I can use my skills and do the kind of back end side of things, and then he can keep the front end of the business running really well.
So,
but yeah, just to give you a little overview on it. So they average about they was averaging about 23 trucks a month, which equates to anywhere between $10-12 million in revenue a year. And they were netting right around $2 million bottom line. So, since we've taken over, we're still in the middle of our transition. Like I said, longer cycles and sales cycles and things, and us trying to get new accounts set up. We're looking at, we've been here 60 days. By the end of 90 days, we should be back to full sun. So by the end of the year, I think we'll be back on that pace, if not even more. So,
man, I want to know what your background was to make you have the brass balls to go after a $10 million revenue company and not think that you were going to even to have the conversation like you were qualified to buy this from that seller? Because most folks, that's a huge hurdle of mental belief with purchasing a company that size. So what is your background?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been entrepreneur since it was popular, from a kid, really. Early on, I've always been into small family-owned business and entrepreneurship. My mom started her own business when I was 12, and I got to see that from the ground floor. It was a landscaping business. I know Kevin can appreciate everything landscaping related. But we literally started pulling weeds for people we knew so she could pay for college. She went back to school whenever I was 12.
Wow.
And me and her would go pull weeds in the afternoon when I got off of school. And she built a landscaping business, and I helped her with that as a kid, physically, and then was mentally absorbing things. And then once I've got into the rate, I'm a racer. My other businesses are go-kart racing and manufacturing, metal manufacturing related. So I got into the go-kart racing at the same time she started that. So by the time I was 15, I had already started my own go-kart business, doing consulting, selling parts, just finding ways to help pay for my racing. So from a young age, I picked up on the entrepreneurship path, and I've just followed it ever since then, trying to be a student. I tell everybody that I talk to now, like, this is the result of the last 20 plus years of working on stuff and getting just getting my mind right to understand it. And now I feel like I'm kind of hitting the hockey stick, right? I've been playing it, and now it's like it's taken off. So tons of just real life experience. I did not go to school for it. I did not have any formal training or education on anything. It was all self-taught, self-learned, hard knocks, just a lot of trial and error. But after, moving from when I was 15 to when I was about 20, both of those businesses accelerated up, got to a different point. And when I was 20, I actually quit the landscape and I went full time with my racing business. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna try to make it on my own, do what I love full time. I did that for like a year, and just being 20 and 21 and being a kid, I kind of let other things interfere. Girls, nothing bad. Never been a big drinker or do anything, drugs, whatever. Like, nothing against people that do, but I was just, racing was my drug. And then I let girls get in the way of that for a little while. But once I got past that and got to where I was 20, when I was 25, met my wife, or now my wife, and said, I want to go back racing. I want to do that. I want to find a way to make it sustainable. So that's when I started building my own chassis. Before, I was slinging parts, I was consulting, but I was like, my own brand is something that's sustainable. And the chassis is really the biggest expense in racing, whenever, as far as the recurring expense, other than like buying a trailer, but that's more like a one-time deal. And I knew the go-karts well enough that I could do that. So that's when I dove off into that when I was 25, started building go-karts, started understanding that. And the go-kart business, I said, I'll do this for 10 years and it's going to be my education. I understand business enough to start this, but I don't know branding. I don't know marketing. I don't know distribution. I don't know how to deal with vendors other than going by plants at one place and put them at somebody's house. I mean, there was a lot of things that I knew I needed to scale up on. So 25 to 30, the first 5 years was just building out that business, understanding everything on a level where I could like do it myself and understand it, knowing it was an education. Didn't know what was next. I said from the beginning, it was in my original business plan and everything. Like, this is going to be an education, and whatever happens beyond this, I don't even know what it is. It's not necessarily going to be built out in racing. It's not necessarily going to be built out in manufacturing. It's just going to be whatever it is, but I'm going to learn everything that I can, and then see, try to roll it into something bigger, better. And I didn't know what that was. When I met Kevin in February, I still couldn't tell you what that was, but knew it was coming. So, fast forward to 2019, that was about 7 years in, of the racing business and making it. I moved to North Carolina. It was sustainable. We expanded it into kind of seeing the whole manufacturing play. So in 2019, I'm like, there's a bigger play here. We make raw metal to finished metal goods at the end of the day. Yeah, they're race go-karts, they're fancy, they're nice, and we pay a lot of attention to them, but it's still raw finished metal goods. So I wanted to build that out. That was my idea. I'm like, hey, that's the next step. That's the next thing. Let's build that out. And then so I found some investors that liked my idea. And up there where we were at North Carolina, huge manufacturing and distributions. Metal manufacturing was big, racing was big. I was where I needed to be. So we started building that idea out in 2019, and that's where early 2020 we decided to buy a powder coating business, and that was going to be our first expansion outside of just doing racing stuff, because I was already using it. I already knew enough about it, and I knew that could be my way to make relationships. Then I could go ride it up the chain. I'm doing your powder coating, now let me do your welding. Now let me do your bending. Now let me do your supplying. Yeah. And I could just vertically integrate. Smart. That was my grand idea. And then COVID hit, right? So we got through COVID with the powder coating shop. Racing survived well because it's just this abstract thing that does whatever the hell it wants, no matter what the rest of the world's doing. So that was fine. We got through COVID stuff. Like everybody thought it was temporary. And then once it got past that, just a different attitude. The whole world's got a different attitude now, right? So didn't want to sink. Originally, we were going to sink a bunch of money organically in and go build out this business. A bunch of CapEx, build out the powder coating, then add the fab and add the machining. It was a great idea, pre-COVID. But after COVID, it was like, sinking a bunch of money into something that's not, quite as proven as what, we want it to be right now doesn't seem smart. Yeah. So that led me to, and in the process, that was 20. And then I'd already started thinking about the acquisition thing, because we acquired that business. And then I had a fab shop I found, and I wanted to acquire the fab shop because that was the next arm. And so the beginning of 21, I picked up another go-kart business, acquired it, and moved all that together. So the two go-kart businesses are running together as one. And I had that one on my mind for 5 years. I mean, I liked the shop they were in. They did the retail side. I did the manufacturing side. Everything made sense. Through COVID, they kind of hit a tumble, and the previous owner was just completely done. So we kind of bought it in free fall, which obviously I learned later that's not what you do. But at the time, I'm like, this is strategic. I'm gonna make it work. Whatever. So I did it. It was a passion play. So I bought that at the beginning of 21. And in the spring of 21, we were trying to get the fab shop deal done. It was another situation where I've been working on the deal. It was actually the guy that got me into powder coating. He was the one that was trying to help me get the fab shop. It was his fab shop. He was trying to help me get going. He passed away. And then I was trying to help the family and help everybody, win-wins, by rolling in the fab work and then them not having to deal with the business anymore since he had passed away. And it just didn't work out. The one thing I learned is, and I'm learning it right now, you can work on a deal for a long time. Everything looks great and it just don't work out. And it's not from lack of effort or trying or nothing, but there's a lot of good deals that just don't work out. And there's who knows the reasons why. So after that, we're midway through 21. And then, like I said, we really understand COVID's long-term effects. Everything's going to change. The economy is going to change. The landscape's going to change. And then my investors are super sharp guys. I mean, so I really listen to what they say. And even though I don't always like to hear what they say, I listen and I take it to heart. And that's when I understood that they didn't want to continue on the path that we originally set. They're good where we're at. Let's do it. Let's run it. Let's keep the play going. But we're not going to do what we said we're going to do. Okay, guys. So then I'm like, I got to do something. And I'm like, I don't have money to be able to go grow it organically. I've already done this acquisition thing twice, almost made the third one work. But I also seen the shortcomings of it. So I'm like, I got to figure this deal out. And end of 21, that's where I found Kyle and Michael and what they're doing with AP. And I was like, this seems like what I need to do. They're going to tell me what I need to know. Was supposed to do the online class in January. I got sick. Kids got sick. The whole month we was wiped out. So they was like, hey, we're doing a live event in Vegas. Just come to Vegas. So went to Vegas and met Kevin, met a lot of other people, and it was just like all the light bulbs went off. It was like, this is what I did wrong. Like most people's like, oh, that's neat. Oh, that's cool. And I'm like, damn it, that's what I did wrong. That's what I did wrong. Now I see why they say that. Like everybody gets excited, and I'm over there like, this sucks.
When you go, it makes
that's
so
all I
much
need.
sense what Kyle and Michael are talking about, Chris. We all know it because I bought business too, and it's that free for all business. That like instinctively you're like, oh, they're in the shitter. I got to grab it now. I'm gonna get it but you don't want it.
Right.
It's a mess. Yeah, you got to get it on the where, hey, this guy did it, and then you just see opportunity to grow it. That's what this was. I love your story. It's so so true. Like you got everything you're at now. You've been building on that literally since you were helping your mom. All those steps. And then you got to get kicked in your teeth a couple times and have to pivot. And you could see what Wesley, every time something hit, you just pivot and you just figured out the next thing and you just kept doing it. And that's why you got to here. Because I see a lot of young guys, they don't really have maybe that background and they just think they're going to step in and get this $2 million net business, but it doesn't work that way. You got to take the steps to do it. How did it go from, so you went to Vegas, that's in January. I mean, people, it's not even a year. What did you do from there? I know you had a lot of deals that kind of fell out. How did it go when you got home and what did you do?
Yeah. So I was the one thing that I was able to do in the end of 21, whenever I found them and understood what was going to happen when I went to Vegas and I was already working on this anyway. I was working on removing myself from other businesses because you got to have the time. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I tell people ask me all the time, how's AP? What do you think about it? What do you think about buying business? And I was like, it is great if it's what you want to do, but you got to commit to doing it and you got to have the time. Because it's just like anything else. You put the time in, you're going to get a result. So I was already mostly detached by the time I went to Vegas in the beginning of February. And then when I came back, it was hit the ground running. I mean, I was in the airport. I'd already had like 6 or 7 deals in the airport that I was working on before I even left to come back. I mean, and it was just nonstop for the whole month of February. I went through a ton of deals, and you got to take them as far as they'll go. I mean, you got to push them, but you also got to know when to quit. But you got to really just push them as far along down the pipe as you can. Some people move fast, some people move slow. So you just got to keep all of them rolling. And I had some other deals that looked real promising, and they just never got there. So I kept working. I had one I was supposed to close on right before I found this one, and I seen this one. I almost didn't even do this one because I already just didn't pursue it because I'm like, well, I'm about to close on this other one. I don't really have time. This is in Florida. I'm closing on one like 4 miles from my house. I'm happy about that, right? Like this is good. Like I found another one that was a good deal and it was close to my house. It was just happenstance. They do work all over the country. They were headquartered 4 miles from where I was at. And I could relate to the business. So I was like, oh, this is good. Well, owner got cold feet, backed out. I mean, literally come down to closing day and just nothing. And but if I wouldn't have kept pursuing, I would have maybe missed out on this deal. But just looked at a lot. The biggest takeaways from everything they say in Vegas, you can take as literally as you can. I think a lot of people's like, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. No, it's literal. Every single one of them, if between the buy box or between the strategy, any of that, like that's all got to be is literally, because any one of those things could you're going to pay the price if you don't take it literally. So I definitely learned that. Number 2 is I started narrow with things I knew, and they teach you not to, but I already had this plan, this idea. I knew so much about the background I was in. I started there and I opened up and I opened up and I opened up. The further I went, the more I opened up, and I finally opened up wide enough to something I wasn't even in. And that's where I found my deal. So I think that, they teach that, but it took me a little while being hard-headed to understand it. So really take everything they say literally, because it's all very true. And then beyond that, you just got to look at a lot of deals. I just looked at so many deals, and this one just happened to be really good. What was the original question? I got off track there.
I'm not sure, but somebody just asked, how were you finding deals? I'm interested in how you were searching for off-market deals.
Yeah. So taking exactly what they taught us about searching for on-market deals is the best way to find off-market deals. So every time I talk to a broker, I told them exactly what I was looking for, exactly what categories, size, everything, and they would plug me in. I said, anytime you get a deal, you think, plug me in, hit me up, whatever. So I was on a ton of mail lists, a ton of broker sites, just doing everything I could to let everybody know what I was looking for. And that brought me the better deals. Ultimately, the off-market deal came from somebody I already knew. And that was because I was talking online. I was telling everybody what I was doing.
You're not a secret
what I was
agent.
looking
You're
for.
talking.
And it right, exactly. And honestly, that's just being a little active on social and telling people what I was doing is what ultimately got me in touch with the right deal.
Yeah,
So,
can you give us an example? Kind of walk us through what those conversations sounded like when you first started making these calls and tracking these deals down. Like, move us through a little bit of that process. Maybe pull from one of your actual examples so that people can understand and get a sense of what it feels like to see a deal, make the phone call to a broker, talk to a seller, what kind of questions you're asking to know if it's even a deal or not that's worth pursuing.
Good question.
yeah, absolutely. So I would say the best start is with how you search for those deals on the sites that they're listed on, the on the biz buy sell and everything else. I put my criteria in. I use biz buy sell because that's where everybody's at. Everything's there for the most part. And I would put my criteria in on revenue and on cash flow, because sometimes they don't always put their cash flow. But once you put I would put my criteria as at least 2 million in revenue, and then at least 500,000 cash flow, and then beyond that, instead of just searching the categories that are preempted, I would search keywords, because keywords will bring them no matter what category they're in. So that would get me to the deals I really wanted. So when I made the phone call and I asked the questions, it was already something I felt very comfortable with. So think about whatever you're doing right now and whatever category you're in, and then whatever keywords would ping with that. Because that's how I went. I went from strictly like fab to machine and fab to full-on manufacturing to manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics. And then when I got to logistics, I finally got to the point where it actually plugged in what ultimately was the trucking thing, right? So, but those conversations, it's really of what Colin might teach. And I'm not trying to just be like a commercial for them, but it's true. I mean, they give you the exact things you need to say, all the questions you need to ask. Once you do that 33 questions with them, then whether it's worth pursuing or not. The biggest ones that come up is financing and trying to get the deal done. So early on, I use what they said. It worked great, but as it went on, I developed my own way of saying it as well. And really the hard questions come around two things. Hard questions come around is how long are they going to stay around after the sale, because you want them as locked in as you can get them. One of the things that we gave up here was the ability to lock them in, but we gave it up for opportunity that we saw. So the ability to lock them in after a sale, to be there to help you, because you're never going to learn their business in 30 days. You're not going to learn the industry in 30 days. So the ability to have access to them after a sale is huge for me, because number one, my number one rule is I don't do deals with assholes. Like, if you're an asshole, I'm not doing a deal with you. So if I don't want to be friends with them long term, I don't want to do the deal with them, because you're gonna fight it. You're gonna fight it the whole time. It's like having a bad business partner. It's like dating a crazy girl. It's the same thing. Like, you don't want to do that. So if you don't like the people, I would advise don't do the business, no matter how good it looks. That was number one. And then number two, it goes back to the financing side. And obviously we're always trying to do owner financing. We're trying to position it where they'll carry some, as much of the load as we can. So my questions really, when I do, like I said, when I started, it would always be like, Are you comfortable? How comfortable? And then I knew based on that where we could probably go with it. But it was much more from asking questions in the beginning because I didn't know to now when I talk to somebody, I tell them, this is what I do. This is what I'm looking for. This is how I do it. If you think that fits, I think this fits. If you think it fits too, then let's move forward. So it's a way different conversation now, but you can start by just purely asking questions. And then now, like I said, when it comes to finance, I tell them up front, hey, all the deals I do, it's at least a third of owner finance. So if you're not comfortable carrying a third of it, I'm probably not the right guy for you. And this is why. And I give them the benefits for them. And then I tell them how I structure the deal.
Yeah. How did you structure this trucking deal? Tell us about how the money played out on this purchase.
Yeah. So like I said, there were some aspects of this deal that we kind of went outside of what our written rule is, because some of the other aspects were just written so well. So the deal structure was so well that we kind of buffed on a little of the other things. But as far as the structure of the deal, so we've got this deal. It was 80% owner finance on the purchase of the business. So we had to come up with the 20% down, and then we had to come up but the purchase of the business didn't include the inventory. And the inventory on dealerships is a mixed bag. Normally it's not all owned. Normally some of it is full plan, which is the financing plans you put in place for your inventory. So inventory is normally negotiated separately. But the meat of the business, it was 80% owner finance, 20% down. And we did that on very good terms. So it's a 20-year AM with a 5-year balloon. So we got really good low payments with 5 years of runway, because we know in 5 years we can refinance it, we can pay it off, we can do whatever we need to do. We just didn't want to put a bunch of debt on top of it in the beginning. And then we had to take care of the inventory. So we purchased the inventory that was left, that was owned, and then we have financing plans put in place to be able to continue buying inventory as well on top of the cash inventory. You want to run a mixture between owned inventory and forward inventory to keep your cash flow right and maximize credit to have more inventory.
So with you, so you're coming in and you've got a massive amount of inventory when it comes to your floor plan debt. What were they looking like? What criteria were they looking at? Was it simply a credit score? Were they looking at your business cash flow? Were they looking at your personal financials? How were they qualifying you to say, yeah, we're going to give these guys this massive floor plan and feel like they're good for it?
Yeah, the answer is all. They look at all of that. And that's where we run into some rough patch in the beginning, because before the deal was done, I had those conversations. What are you looking for? How do I get this? What do I do? Fortunately, they didn't have many vehicles floored at the time of purchase. That was kind of part of our deal. They went ahead and tried to cash out as many as they could. But that was also our runway to build back up after the purchase is done. And but the answer is all of it. Every lender, no matter what you're lending on, they're going to look at everything, because even though it's not a startup, they look at it as a startup. And that's really, we tried to get every exception, give them all the information, do whatever we could to avoid that. And we were told that we could get the exception. We were told that we could be in the clear. And then after everything's done, they come back and they're like, oh, no, you got to start over. So we've had some rough patches trying to get through that on that piece of it. Because that's one thing about, unfortunately, they always look at it as a startup if you form a new entity. And sometimes they still look at it even if you do a stock sale. Because I've done stuff too where I'm like, I'll do a stock sale, be able to maintain the vendor relationships or the credit lines or the whatever. And it's all situational, but a lot of times you start over, unfortunately.
Why did you choose to do an asset sale over a stock sale in this situation?
Two things. It was basically all goodwill. So there really wasn't a reason to do a stock sale like there wasn't a equipment that I have to pay tax on. There wasn't titles to be transferred on trucks and stuff like that because the inventory is separate anyway. So it just made the most sense, and it took away our liability. The asset sale piece is really there to protect you from past liabilities, and we wanted to make sure that we were protected there because the financial were not as clean cut as some businesses as far as just the way that they kept their books in the past, and which made the opportunity of the deal, but it's also a risk if you continue on under the same entity.
So what did your team look like in this process? I mean, you've got a lot of moving parts on this purchase.
Yeah.
So was this just you going in there saying, hey, man, I'm a risk taker, let's gamble on this thing, I'm betting on myself? Or did you really lean on other team extensions of your team, like Kevin and not Kevin, Kyle and Michael? Did you have a M&A attorney? Like, what did that team look like that was helping you walk this process?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of everything. I took the thing that I feel like I do well and like my core competency. It's kind of an alchemy thing. It's like I take situations that don't look like they go together at all, and then like blend them all together and make something good out of it. Like that's if I can like narrow down like what Wesley can do well. I'm observant enough to see all the things, and then I figure out ways to connect them. I'm not always the connector, but I can connect them and then put the right people in the right places. So, the majority of it, I've got my partner, Ricky, he's operations side, the front side of the business. As far as the deal itself, he didn't really do a lot with that. That's, that was obviously more me. That was my role, but we have another partner that helped us to put some of the information together and try to do some of the fundraising. But the majority of it I did on my own, and I did it between every connection relationship that I had, from Facebook to the group, the AP group, people I knew. We really just did everything we could, because that's what it took. I kind of just shotgunned it all out there and seen what happened. I mean, I had a lot of conversations, and it was my first time fundraising. That's a whole nother thing. Getting ready to do a deal like this is one thing. Fundraising for it is a whole nother thing. So I learned real fast a lot of things. I reached out. I was just a sponge and trying to learn everything I could. And once again, it was more like, how does this work? So I can then go back and pick who I know or who I've met that maybe could help me in with this. But so many people, I couldn't name them all. And I don't know if it would have happened if I wouldn't have just, talked to every one of them and had every idea. I mean, even down with Kevin. I mean, Kevin gave me some great ideas when I talked to him about it. So there was just a lot of different people that had a hand in it. I was kind of the orchestrator at the end of the day, but it was really a big group effort and a lot of AP effort. Not directly, but indirectly. We raised, so that 20%, we actually raised that whole 20% through AP with people in there. Awesome. That, was talking about the deal, showing them the deal, saying, even like last minute, like after I talked to you, Kevin, we had an AP call Wednesday, we were closing Friday. And I'm like, guys, if I don't get this deal is dead. And so we raised the rest of the money and got it done. I mean, it was
how much did you end up? How much did you have to raise for that, Wesley? How much did you have to raise?
We needed 400,000 to close, and we raised 450.
Yeah, so this is a point I want to say for this specific for Wesley. When I called you, I remember we did a quick call. I was seeing your thing on Facebook. I was like, maybe I'll get involved in this. I knew he was in the acquisitionpreneur, but when I talked to Wesley, he knew his shit up and down. I remember I got off the phone and I was thinking to myself, I'll do a deal with this guy. And sometimes an investor or somebody like me, we get off the phone and we're like, yeah, I'm not doing a deal with that guy. But they don't tell you that. They just get off the phone. They're like, yeah, well, I'll get back to you. But that's how I felt when I get off it. That's how I've invested in a lot of real estate and stuff. When people know their stuff, and it's not that they know every number in their head. They just can articulate it. They build confidence in you. You know that guy's like, it just everything you were saying was giving me confidence. And I just think that's really important for people who are raising money. You have to know your stuff. and you got to know that deal inside and out. And that's tough sometimes because you're going to know deals inside and out, the finances that don't even come to fruition. So that's kind of like, you got to put a lot of work in, but you get confidence. And that's why you were able to raise that money, because I know some of the people who invested in you, they felt that they got the same thing, I'm sure, that I did. It's really important for people when they say, well, how am I going to raise 800,000? Well, first, you can't be a secret agent. You got to start telling people what you're doing. And then you got to build confidence. And when it's time to tell them about that deal, you got to know it inside and out.
And it goes back just to reps. I mean, I talked to so many people. I regurgitated the same information so many times. I got to the point where I could understand it better and understand how to articulate it better. I mean, it goes back to time. Like I said, you gotta, if you want to do this, it is very hard, but it's also very simple. But you got to have the commitment and you got to have the time. I mean, because if you do those two things, you can't fail as long as you don't give up. And that's life. But it's exploited in this because it's a longer process. It is a bigger challenge, and it's very much a lot of moving pieces that most people don't deal with on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, I had some past experience doing it, even though it was wrong, it was experience. And so I feel like that really helped me. And that's why I don't, I tell people, like, don't expect to do what I'm doing right now because you don't know the last 20 years, but it's very doable. I mean, even from the last event in Nashville, there's already people closing businesses, good businesses.
Yeah.
I got one that's closing right down the road in Orlando with the lady and the husband and wife from Alaska. I mean, it's crazy. But with just to kind of like summarize, like more deal related right now, to do the things like I did and to move forward in the way that to make it the best situation. The owner financing is really important because with interest rates going, banks are tightening up. It's really going to be a lot harder to do traditional finance deals right now. Owner financing gives you so much creativity, so much power to get the deal done. That's really, I think that's number one now, is an owner that's willing to do that. And that shows, it goes back to the buy-in. Like, it shows the owner understands you and likes you enough to do that.
So let's talk about that for a second. So first of all, what did you see as an upside to this business that made you say, oh, this is a business that I can take and grow and make it better? And then did you explain that to the seller so that seller did have that buy-in of confidence that they were willing to owner finance an 80% chunk of it to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing I saw was really at the beginning, it was very, very shallow. I didn't see a lot because, like I said, off market deal. It was like, hey, this business is doing $2 million in net, and it's a dealership. And I'm like, well, I don't know nothing about dealership, but my cousin does. So me and Ricky's relationship is what really sparked the idea to make this whole thing happen. We've been talking every Christmas for 20 years about business and life and stuff like that, and we've never been able to really work together or do a lot together. And whenever I called him, it was just good time. And I'm like, hey, I'm interested in this, but I'm not going to do it without you. And I didn't never think in a million years he would say yes, but he did. So I got lucky there.
That was a key factor, bringing him in.
But as far as the the dealer, the structure and all that, it was kind of like an audition, I guess you'd say. And there's this thing. Look, I'm bringing Ricky. He's got all this experience in franchise dealer side. I know he can knock that out. I've got my business background. I know I can knock that out. And then by then we had some financials and background and stuff like that. And like, hey, we see these holes. We see these opportunities. We see what they're doing. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's still very much mom and pop shop, and there's nothing wrong with that. But knowing what we knew and knowing what I know and have learned about scaling the business and putting in to professionalizing the business and the processes, and then knowing that we can incorporate that franchise dealer side ideas into this, it was like, man, it's a no-brainer. We got to just figure out a way to get it done.
So the seller sat there and
then once we conveyed that, yep. Yeah, once we conveyed that, that was it. Because it wasn't just us. We were competing. We were competing against Colin and Michael on this deal, but they didn't have an operator. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna say competing. We both looked at it, you know. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, there was other people that were well qualified that could have done the deal. We really had to sell ourselves that we could do it, and then, you know, obviously the commitment to just do it. Because there's a lot of people, like I said, it goes back to the commitment thing. Um, you know, Colin and Michael can go do a lot of deals, but and that's why they're always looking for operators, because that commitment to making it work and operating the deal, that is a big piece of it.
I'm glad you spoke about the operation side because it's the same thing with real estate. Everybody talks about the purchasing, and that's where the glam is. Hey, I just bought this $10 million apartment complex. I just bought this $10 million dealership. But when it gets down to the operations, that $10 million apartment complex or dealership can go to shit if you don't operate it correctly. Or it can scale up and be a $20 million asset if it's operated right. And I like the fact that you brought a partner in because you knew where your strengths were. You self-reflected enough that you said, okay, I need someone with experience in this field so that we can be a power team. And it's the same thing when you get into the apartment syndication. And I know a lot of real estate people are in this group as well. So, and also the fact that you can take these same creative financing techniques from the real estate world and plug it into the business acquisitions. That's why it's so cool to have you on here talk about how you've purchased this and what that process kind of looked like. Is there anything that you would tell the viewers that they should be aware of? I know your past experience has played a lot into your success so far on this, but what tips would you tell someone that's just now looking into trying to acquire their first business?
Yeah, I think really the partnership piece is the partnership, and then seeking the information you don't know. I mean, go and try to either learn what you don't know or find somebody that knows it, and use. A lot of people are willing to help. And that's what's great about being in a group like AP, because you got people with a bunch of different skill sets, and you can have a lot of different knowledge. And it's not just AP. I mean, it's just networking, period. I would have met Kevin eventually somehow. I went to Mark's event, and, you know, and we're all online together. So really the networking piece, to seek the information you don't know, and then partner up with somebody that can fill the gap you don't have, whether that's the financing piece, the operating piece. You know, maybe it's just connections in the industry. I think a lot of people think they got to do it all themselves and tackle the whole thing themselves. And I don't think that's the smart way to do this up front, unless you just got the experience and have the grit to say, I'm going to do it. You know, I mean, I've even moved down here. I wasn't originally planning to move down here. I moved down here 3 weeks after. I'm like, I got to be here. We got to do it. We got to make it work. Not everybody will move halfway across the country to do it, you know? So it's, yeah, definitely partnerships are great. There's a lot of knowledge out there that you can get from people. And that's the big thing, because the difference, and from what I know, between real estate stuff, as far as the buying and syndicating the way that most people are, and what we're doing with businesses that is very similar, is the business has a much higher potential return, but there's a lot more moving pieces. There's a lot more to be there. So you know, and there's more risk. So mitigating that risk comes through the partnerships, the relationships, and the knowledge. I really think that's probably the key for the crowd and for the people that's really looking to do this. Like, it's a great thing. I was doing it regardless. I don't do anything else. I don't do real estate. I don't have anything else. But for people that want to move into the sector, definitely partner up with the right people. And I do that too. I mean, I did a deal with my buddy down in Fort Lauderdale. I've got another one I'm working with another AP guy right now. I just told everybody on AP last night, and I'll tell y'all, like, the 30-second spiel here. I've got another deal right down the road. I'm looking for somebody to help me with that deal, because I want to invest more time here. I see the opportunity here and what we can do here. Originally, I was going to go down the road and operate that one, and Ricky was going to be here, but we're both just going to dive in here. I'm looking for an operator, a financial partner to maybe take that on, I can still help. I'm still right here. I'm still, able to strategically be involved, but, just do more of the day-to-day stuff. And I mean, that's a $1 million a year net in business that we're getting to real estate. And, they've got about $1 million worth of equipment, almost $1 million worth of real estate, and $1 million in cash flow. So it's another great business. You can only be stretched so thin, and we've got so much opportunity here now that we see it. I just really want to focus on it.
I think that's so important. I was going to touch on that because when I was asking Wesley how much you're doing, because I wanted to write up a thing for this, and he said turning down another $1 million net deal because we're so focused on this. That's how you have to think. You got to be zeroed in on what you're doing. And then he's thinking, hey, if I want to take this other one, I got to bring another financial partner, operation partner. Sometimes guys, they message me and they're like, yeah, I'm going to get this one and these three. And I'm like, slow down. Let's get one. And then the last part of that is you got to get out to an event like Acquisitionpreneur. We love that one. It's the best one. It's everything you learn, but it's the networking. And then that group of people know that you're really invested. And that's how you can build those relationships to do it. I don't know. You guys know Sean Stipe, but he's brought me a couple deals. Looks like we're going to do this deal together up by him, but I met him in Nashville. I knew him from this show, Blue Collar Millionaire. We had messaged, but he's a super bright guy. And then I know how much effort he's putting in to go there. I think that event's $5,000. If you're not willing to put $5,000 in 3 days and really go all out, are you really going to buy? You're not going to buy a business that is as big as the one Wesley did. I just don't think you will. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you definitely got to invest in yourself. That's the best investment you can make. I've had so many people that I've talked to and that I follow, and it took me a while to understand that, and that's really helped out a lot with opening my mind up to what I need to be doing and what I can be doing. As far as answering the question on the screen, traditionally we want to buy them with them, but if they're not in place, I mean, if they're not in place to the degree, if you're not going to operate it yourself, then yes, an equity operator is a good thing. It's not necessary, but I think it's the right thing because it just aligns everybody's interests. So to answer that question.
Good question. That question from Brock.
The other thing I wanted to just touch on that, because I think was that the one I answered?
Yeah, you answered it.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on, just because I think it's relevant here, when you look at doing the acquisitions, every business isn't built the same. And if you really study to find the businesses that have good scalability and that are in industries that really multiply results instead of just adding results, that's another good way to not have to do as many transactions. Like I said, you can do, like what you were saying, Kevin, you can do one deal and it can really have a lot of runway. You want to have something that's got a lot of runway.
Yeah.
And that's what, like I said, the more we're here, the more we see that. So definitely makes a big difference.
I think that's really important. And people are asking about off-market deals. There's tons of good deals on the market, on Biz Buy Sell. It depends what you're looking for. So I see deals all the time where I say, hey, I mean, if it was 15 or 20 years ago, I'd jump all over that. That's a good deal. But for now, it's not what I want. But all you need is one deal that can change your life. And you got to really get in on Biz Buy Sell and look at it. And Wesley, you probably did this, Chris, like I'll get caught up in this like 2.5 hours later and I'm still doing it. Like other people want to watch Netflix and movies. Like I'm sitting there looking at deals. And the more you look at deals, the more you can disqualify them really quickly or say, oh, that guy's full of shit. That there's no way he's doing cash flow on that at that rate. You start, and then you just start, oh, okay, I'll look at this type of business. Your mind opens up. You see a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a great network. It's a way that you can, it's just a good way to start. Like I said, contacting brokers, and then they have their network. So they're advantageous on getting you a deal because That's how they
Bro-
get paid. Like I said, I had
if brokers,
a lot of brokers working for me.
if brokers think you can close on deals, whether it's they think you have money or they think you have the know-how, or they can just see you're serious, they'll stalk you.
No.
Send them a proof of funds, and they'll be your best friend. They'll email you every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Hey Wesley, it was great having you
Yeah, I
on. I
still get
really
deals. I get
appreciate it.
deals all
There's
the
so
time.
much info today. And if you are
Yeah, I
doing that
appreciate it
deal,
too.
you
I
can
love what
come
y'all are
back and
doing.
you
I
can.
mean, it's
If you're doing that deal that you're saying, if you guys are thinking of acquiring, you should come back on. You could do 10 minutes, talk about the deal. We'll do it on Deal Flow Friday and
Yeah.
see who in this group might want to get invested in on that.
Right.
It's a great way to get started.
yeah, I've had to. Yeah.
All right.
I'm in.
All right, let's do it. All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Chris, we're good.